Toast. God bless y'all. To the Morning Word crowd, God bless y'all, and God bless America. Okay, David, we read it yesterday about encouraging himself after Ziklag burned. It says that, let's read this right here. David inquires of the Lord, ask the Lord if he should go follow them. The Lord says, follow them, you're going to recover all, which is exactly what they did. But let's look at this. So David went, he and the 600 men who were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those stayed who were left behind. But David, he and 400 men, for 200 men stayed behind, who were so weary that they could not cross the brook Besor. Then they found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David. And they gave him bread, and he ate. And they let him drink water, and they gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. So when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, to whom do you belong, and where are you from? And he said, I am a young man from Egypt, a servant of an Amalekite, and my master left me behind, because 3 days ago I fell sick. We made an invasion of the southern area of the Cherethites in the territory which belongs to Judah, and of the southern area of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. Oh, he's in that group. Okay. And David said to him, can you take me down to this troop? And he said, swear to me by God that you will neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this troop. And when he had brought him down, there they were spread out over all the land, eating and drinking and dancing because of all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. Then David attacked them from twilight until evening the next day. Not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives, and nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything which they had taken from them. David recovered all. Then David took all the flocks and the herds that they had driven before those other livestock, and said, this is David's spoil. Now, I'm going to stop there. I was going to read on and do something else with it this morning, but I'm going to cut it a little bit short for time's sake, because I was behind the 8 ball, and that's not your fault. That's my fault. So let's look at this for just a minute, and let's go back to David and the men. They're going after the Philistines, and they come up on a young man in a field. They don't know who he is, but he probably looks like he's been rode hard and put up wet. Been out all night at the Cowboy. And so they round him up, they bring him in, and they ask him. They said, who are you? They gave him some food and water to eat. Obviously, he was obviously in trouble nutritionally and physically. Hadn't eaten anything or drunk anything in 3 days, probably on the run with this war team of Philistines. And it finds out that he's a young man from Egypt. All right. He said, a servant of Amalekite. In other words, he was with the bunch that overran David's city and took those people captive. I'm sorry, people are texting me this morning. They ought to know better. And so he's with this bunch that's warring, but he's not there willfully. See, he is an Egyptian slave of an Amalekite. He said, I'm a young man from Egypt, a servant of an Amalekite. All right, so he's not in his country. He's a slave to another people, an Amalekite, and my master left me behind. He's been abandoned because 3 days ago I fell sick. In other words, he was sick. He couldn't keep up with the war party, so they just left him. All right, they just left him in the middle of the field. He was sick. He stayed there 3 days, no food, no water, and they came up on him. David's men came up on him, and instead of killing him instead of just beating him, they asked him, who are you? Where are you from? Who you belong to? What are you doing here? So he said, I'm with this group. And he tells them, we went down to Ziklag. Among these other places, we went to Ziklag. We attacked it. We burned it with fire. We took all the spoil. David said, can you tell us where these guys are? These guys that he was running with, right? Can you tell us where these guys were? He said, yeah, man, if you won't kill me and if you won't give me back to my master, I'll lead you right to him. And that's exactly what they did. Now, here's the morning word. You and I, we've done it. We know better, but we've done it. Don't judge a book by its cover. You ever heard that? Yeah, you did if you're in my age group. Don't judge a book by its cover. You can't tell by looking at people what kind of asset or help they may actually provide you, or what kind of way God might use them in supernatural ways that helps the cause of the kingdom. Just because they look like they don't belong here, he's an Egyptian. Just because they look poor, he's a slave. Just because they look hungry and worn out, doesn't mean that he's a homeless, worthless person. When we judge books by their cover, we are assuming something to be true when it may not necessarily be true. This guy was not a willing participant. He was not a Philistine. He was somewhere in life he had been taken from his home and taken as a slave. You just don't know what people have been through. And you don't know what people have seen and done, and you don't know what kind of gifts and talents they have, and you just don't know, we don't know, how God can use them. God can use anybody. God used an Egyptian, Amalekite slave in the land of Israel to lead David to the Philistine warring army to catch up with them and to get their wives and their children back and all their resources. He was left in the field for dead. He was left for dead. And we are all guilty. We see people in life and we immediately put them in some sort of class, category, whatever. We make assumptions based on their dress, their car, their home, or the lack thereof, their appearance. And we immediately think, sorry, no good, work, won't work, whatever. And we don't know. I mean, that may be true. It may be true. But then again, it may not be true. And so we should not judge a book by its cover, right? The flip side of that is you see somebody that looks like they got it all together. I'm talking about in any facet of their life. It looks like their marriage is perfect, their body is perfect, their face is perfect, their work is perfect. I mean, it looks like, and you quietly sit there and compare yourself to them and you go, oh man, I wish I was like them. They could be falling apart like a $2 suitcase. You don't know. We can't judge people by their cover. We need to give, Christians especially, need to give all people the same consideration as we want them to give us. All right? I don't want them to assume I'm some snooty, high-minded, highfalutin, better than you, white man oppressor. All right? I'm not that. I don't want people to look at me and think that. Likewise, we should not turn around and flip the script and think of someone else, whether they be Middle Eastern looking, foreign looking, black, Hispanic, white, whatever. We are so bad. And even in the church, when people come into your church, Paul wrote about this. Paul said, stop treating people with favor if they look like they come into your church well-dressed, well-mannered, rolled up in a Benz, and look like, they can be a financial blessing to our church. They look like they might can help us, right? The flip side of it is some guy that comes in looking less than that, and we don't even go shake his hand. Paul warned against that. He said, this is the word I was trying to think of. Don't show partiality. The reason you're showing partiality is because you're judging a book by its cover. That poor man may give you the last nickel in his pocket, and that rich man may not give you a look. And so, as I was reading this here, and I saw my little footnote down here, and I highlighted it. It says, treat those you meet with respect and dignity, no matter how insignificant they may seem. Treat everybody the way you would want them to treat you. Don't judge a book by its cover. Everybody that's Middle Eastern is not like AOC and Mamdani. Everybody that's from an Islamic country is not here to try to cut our heads off. Most of them are as involved in their faith as we are the Christian faith, which is 2 weekends a year. You know what I'm talking about, right? So let's don't continually look at everything on the surface and make a judgment. Good or bad. Good or bad. Let's let every person have their say. Let's let every person have a chance to identify themselves, not just with their words, but with their actions. He said, I'm a young man from Egypt, a servant of an Amalekite, and my master left me behind because 3 days ago I fell sick. That could have been my son. That could have been your son. And if David had been like you or I, we might have killed that boy. And we might have, when we had done that, killed our chances at victory. Do not judge a book by its cover. Read it and see what it has to say. We'll see you tomorrow. Good Lord willing, and the saints don't rise. Peace out.